Okay, good morning. Welcome to this introductory short course on coaching in skill development. Right. So this is a very specific area where we are focusing in terms of using coaching in skill development. Right. So we'll go into that straight away. But before we start, just a quick activity. Start the morning. What I'd like you to do is to share in under 2 minutes, right? So just a very quick sharing. In terms of your understanding of coaching, all right? Just based on your understanding of coaching, I don't know if you have took the time to search up the definition of coaching on the internet, but if you did, you probably find there's a lot of different variations of definition of coaching. So just your own understanding of coaching, preferably based on your own experience with coaching, and the characteristics of a good coach, right? Again, based on your understanding of coaching. Okay? So let's start off with maybe Kitty. And I'll move around the table.
So I think for me, in terms of the first part, understanding of coaching, is probably the ability to help someone realize their potential that they have. And in order to do that, typically it really varies from people to people. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. So for me, characteristics of a good coach is basically someone that is able to understand the need of each specific person.
Understand the needs.
Yeah, each specific person, because everyone needs different ways and different methods to grow to their maximum potential. And then also to understand this person's potential in order to guide the person to the right direction.
So understand the needs and potential of coaching. Okay. Thanks for sharing. Lawrence?
Yeah, sure. Specifically for adults, a lot of time the coaching to me is not telling someone to do something, but rather asking the right questions so that the person who is receiving this information can interpret, right, and reflect on his or her own ability of that situation, so that that person can improve, right?
Okay. And the characteristics of
A lot of patience, right? A lot of patience, a lot of empathy.
patience and empathy. Great. Okay. Anything else?
Willing to invest time.
Okay. Very good. Willing to invest in. Willing to invest in. Thanks, Lawrence. Ethan, would you like to share?
You guys got it.
Yeah.
Nothing else to say.
Very similar. What about the characteristics? So very similar. Or do you have some other?
I guess the coach needs to be, maybe, have a skill proficiency in what they're coaching.
So proficiency. So basically like a subject matter expert. Okay. Proficiency. What? Thanks for sharing. Irene?
For me, I don't think that the coach needs to be the subject expert in what they're coaching, but they do need to be respected, maybe in their field or industry. I think what is important for a coach is the ability to be non-judgmental, to be really open. They need to also be able to ask a lot of open-ended questions. And through the coaching process, perhaps give some leading questions so that the coachee themselves, similar to what Lawrence was saying, will then reflect and take the next steps of what needs to be done in terms of that coaching journey.
Okay. In terms of definition, similar to your understanding of coaching, is it?
Coaching needs to be a two-way relationship. Both must be willing. If the coachee is unwilling or being coerced or forced by the manager to be coached, then that relationship will not work between the coach and the coachee.
So that translates to, if I understand correctly, that translates to a characteristic that the coach should have good relationship with the coachee as well.
They must have some certain level of chemistry.
Good. Well, thanks very much for your input. Right. As I mentioned earlier on, there's actually no right or wrong definition of coaching. Right. I've actually scoured the internet and actually found a lot of different variations of coaching. Right. Some actually are quite different from the others, so you have actually a spectrum in terms of how to do coaching. Right. But basically for today, as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll be focusing pretty much in terms of coaching in application of skill development, right? And I'll share more with you in a short while. Let's start with
We can refer to our handouts also.
use
What
coffee.
happens when full screen when you're leaving idle for a long time and it freezes?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, So?
Yesterday I was testing it, but didn't happen yesterday, so pretty unlucky it happened this morning. Okay. We will look at the third, the course topics. Right? So basically, what we'll be covering today is the definition of coaching and to compare it with other approaches that are actually used in skill development. Right? And then we will talk about very briefly about the types of coaching, right? Because you would probably have encountered things like life coaching, for example, or life coaches, right? So we'll be talking briefly on that, and then we'll move on to challenges in skill development. So now we're going very specific into skill development and the challenges that skill development has, and how coaching can help with those challenges. And the next part will basically be talking about when to apply coaching, right, in skill development, because coaching, despite the fact that it's a very good approach, it wouldn't be suitable in all phases of the skill development, right? So there's times when you need to apply coaching and times that when you would be using other approaches. And then we'll move on to talking about the GROW model, right, which is I think universally accepted as the base model for the base framework for coaching. And I'll be going very specific into the coaching framework that we'll be using today. Next will be the skills needed for effective coaching, right? What are the skills? So coaching, if you look at it itself, it's not just one skill, but actually a set of skills, right? And it's also combined with a particular framework, yeah. So you actually need certain skills, and I'm very glad that from your sharing us now, you actually have highlighted some of those skills already, right? And finally, we'll be covering in terms of the application of the coaching framework, right, in the day-to-day work. Any questions? Anything that you all think that may not have been covered in this area? No? Okay, great. Let's get started. The definition of coaching, right? This is just one definition, which I found on the internet, right? But very closely resembling the kind of experience personally that I have with coaching, right? And pretty much, I think, aligned with the way that we want coaching to apply skill development, right? So if I just quickly read out to you, coaching is unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. Okay? And we'll be talking about different approaches, like for example, teaching and training, right? So the word teaching here appears. So good coaches believe that individual always has the answer to their own problems, but understands that they may need to help to find the answer. Okay? And how that's done is the key skill of coaching is asking the right questions to help the individual go through their own challenges. Right? So that's why I said very glad, because it's now you actually shared actually most of the things that will be covered here today. Yeah. Let me see if the projector is working. Let's hope it doesn't freeze again. Okay, so that's the definition of coaching, and you can actually look it up in this website called Skills With Me. There are also a lot of different resources inside there as well. Okay. So let's quickly compare coaching versus other methods. Yeah. Because often we hear people use the term, especially in skill development, the term teaching, training, giving instructions, giving feedback, sometimes mentoring, and counseling as well. Okay. So let's quickly go through it so that we understand actually where coaching sits in comparison with the rest of the coaches, right? So again, I need help on this. Let's quickly run through. What's your understanding of teaching? Anyone?
It's more like knowledge sharing, right? Like broadcasting.
Anyone else?
One way.
Pretty much one way, yeah. So both of you actually got it correct. Teaching is basically imparting knowledge, right? Again, pretty much like coaching, if you look at the definition of teaching, it's very varied, right? But essentially it's about giving knowledge or imparting knowledge, right, to the recipient. And it's pretty much one way, right? Of course, sometimes in teaching is actually quite broad. You can also employ other methods as well, like coaching or training as well. So, but typically it's one way, and it's more in terms of a lot of very broad knowledge, usually, right? Usually very broad knowledge of the subject, and for example, it also invites critical thinking as well, right? So, how is that compared to this training? What's your understanding of training? Vicky? What's your understanding of training versus teaching?
I think there's few different, I mean, at the top of my head, I think there's at least two different ways of training. So one is kind of like, you have possibly something like seminars as well, where you actually kind of teach, I mean, in my understanding, pretty similar in that sense. The other way of training is, I think, a bit more practical, in the sense of giving you a set of things where you keep repeating, doing the same thing, until you're good at it.
Okay.
That's the two I have at the top of my head.
So training is more of repetition, right? In terms of using the skill, right? Okay, so pretty much close, pretty close to at least my understanding of training itself. So training usually focus more in very skill specific topics, right? Where you need to apply them. And usually training involves a lot of things like, first, they impart, of course, the knowledge, but then it's a lot more in terms of demonstration, and then skills application, and like you said, repetitions of the skills, right? So that is how training is usually differentiated from teaching. It's more focused and it's very skill application based impart the knowledge and then you ask the recipients to actually apply it, and then you actually go through usually repetitions to ensure that they actually have good competency of the skills, right? So that's training, right? What about instructing? How is instructing different from training and teaching?
The instructing is just telling the person what they need to do without necessarily explaining why they are doing something. But this time then you need to do this, you know, X, Y, Z, pretty much.
Pretty much.
There's also lack of feedback. That's instructing.
Correct. Usually it's very much one way, right? Yeah. Okay. So for example, instructions are usually given in more simple kinds of skills. Like for example, you are telling your child to asking them to fry an egg. Then you give them very specific instructions. First, you know, you have to heat up the pan, then after that you heat up the oil. So it's pretty much one way where you're not expecting feedback from them, right? So it's instructing, just instructing. Okay. So how is it different from giving feedback?
Maybe instructing is also maybe when there is an element of safety involved, where there's urgency for something that needs to be done. So then you give a strict instruction rather than waiting for feedback, because no compromise can be made during that time.
Okay. So what you're saying is you give instructions when you have urgency, and for example when there are issues of safety. Okay, good. Thanks for that input. So how is it different from giving feedback?
That is like a response.
Response to
An observation.
exactly, right? So giving feedback versus instructions, right, is basically you usually give feedback after you observe something, right? Observe a behavior or observe a performance, for example, and then you give feedback, right? Whereas instructions is without the observation, without the performance, observing the behavior, you actually give up the set of instructions, the set of knowledge, right? So how is that different from mentoring? I'm sure you've heard of the word mentoring, right? And I think in companies, a lot of companies actually use that, especially when you have new staff, and then the senior staff is asked to mentor the new staff, right? So how is mentoring different from what we have, the four different approaches that we have talked about?
It's probably a role that includes all of the above. So they have to teach, they have to train, they have to instruct, and give feedback.
Okay. So what I hear is that you're saying that it actually is a combination of all that we have discussed, right? So yes, mentoring is usually very broad, right? It doesn't cover just one particular area or one particular approach. You are expected to, say for example, teach, what you can say, train, instruct, and also give feedback, right? And usually done based on the basis of experience, right? Based on the basis of experience. And that's why you are actually asked to mentor the new person, because it's based on your own experience, right? But it can also include other things, like for example, a particular skill set or a particular syllabus, for example. You can also mentor. But mentor also involves a lot of advice, right? So in a way, well, I would say advice and giving feedback is quite similar, right? Yeah, but usually involves a lot of advice. Yeah. But yes, it does actually cover the rest as well. Okay. What about counseling? Last but not least, have you encountered the word counseling? Yes. So how is counseling different from the others? Any attempt? Any try? Counseling. So counseling is usually in the context of, usually if you look at definition counseling usually is when there's a situation or when there's a challenge or problem that the person is facing, right, that requires a form of so-called therapy, then counseling is involved. Right? Even in workplace, I mean, you can encounter it in personal life or in workspace, there's also counseling as well. And usually counseling is given when the staff has a particular issue, right, that is not easily addressed by the other approaches. Yeah. And often, often even in workplaces, involves usually personal issues as well, or it could be, for example, attitude of the staff. Right? So that's usually counseling, what counseling covers.
Just to add to that, maybe counseling these days is quite popular in terms of mental health at workplace. Like this is a hot topic.
Very true, very true. Thanks for adding that. Because now because of the emphasis on mental health, counseling is now a pretty popular approach. Yeah, so maybe that could be our next topic, counseling. Okay, thanks very much for your input. Right, and the importance of this particular session is that we need to understand actually what coaching is and actually how it's actually different from the rest. Yeah, so you already heard the definition of coaching, and now you actually more or less understand the different approaches that actually use, right, in skill development. I would say counseling is usually not applied in skill development, right? Not so much in skill development, right? But we often hear, right, people actually do use the term counseling even for skill development. So I just want to make sure that we are able to differentiate and understand the different approaches. Yeah. Any questions? Any other info? No, then we'll move on. Right. So now it works. Okay. Different types of coaching. Career coaching. Anyone has encountered or experienced career coaching?
Yes.
You have experienced career coaching? Yeah. Okay. So, just top of your head, how is career coaching different from, for example, coaching in skill development?
Career coaching normally happens when there is a roadblock by the coachee, right? And the coaches will help the person, the coachee, to understand what are the options, what are the methods available out there. So this is a little bit different from performance coaching or skill development coaching because those are a little bit more specific in terms of the targeted learning experience.
Very well explained. Right. So career coaching usually is, of course, as the word implies, right, the term implies is related to your career. And usually when the coachee, the recipient, usually has a challenge moving forward in terms of the career, in terms of maybe, for example, the choices or the career path that they should be taking. Right? And that's when career coaching comes in. What about life coaching? Anyone has experienced life coaching? No. Okay. Basically, you look at the definition of life coaching is actually very broad. So life coaching can encompass or can cover a lot of different areas, right? And usually, but very similar to career coaching. Career coaching is also done by so-called either a subject matter expert, SME, or it could be done by, for example, someone who has knowledge of all the options or paths for your career, right? Maybe, for example, HR, right? Could be a career coach, right? But both basically entails or require the person to have an experience related experience to it, right? So you will look for a life coach that when you have a particular issue in life that the person has, for example, maybe similar experience, right? Or they are renowned, right? Maybe they're very well known. So you may want, and you think that you are moving along in their path, the same path as they are, and you want to tap on their experience, right? And what is the similarity between career coaching, life coaching versus performance coaching and skill? The similarity and differences between the career career and life versus performance and skill coaching, and skill development coaching. So let's start with similarities. What do you think are the similarities between
Long
all?
term, longer term in terms of career and life coaching.
So that's the
Similarities, yeah.
okay, yeah. And what about the recipient in terms of what are the so-called receptiveness of the recipient to life coaching, career coaching? Usually for life coaching, career coaching, do you seek it out, or does the recipient seek it out, or they're actually given?
They should seek out.
They're actually seeking out, right? So if you look at this in terms of performance coaching and skill development coaching, which we actually haven't spoken about, life coaching and career coaching is actually more where the recipient actually looks for it, right? Seeks for it. Whereas in performance coaching and skill development coaching, usually the recipient may not necessarily seek for it, but it's part of the job, right? And that's why, but it also could be part of them looking for it, but not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. Okay. So performance coaching, quick one. What do you think of what do you think is performance coaching?
I think that it's probably when someone is not doing what they are expected to do, then someone has to come in and understand the situation. Probably help this person like understand what he or she needs to do, and also to understand his problem and all challenges in getting there.
Right. So performance coaching is what you put, when it is applied when, for example, you have issues with performance, but may not necessarily. So add to that as well. You can also be to boost the performance. You may not have a problem, but you want to boost the performance of the recipient. Improvements, right? So yeah, I think the word is actually improvement. You're always looking at how to improve in terms of performance, right? And how is that different from the last one, skill development, which is the topic that we're covering today? What's the difference between performance coaching and skill development coaching?
I think skill is very specific, right? To a specific competency that needs to be acquired or prerequisite of the job of the coaching. So it's something very specific. Performance is a bit broader. It could be a combination of different competency to complete the task of the job description of the coaching.
Thanks very much for that. You hit the nail, right? Exactly. Performance coaching is usually a set of skills, right? Because in order to perform, to be able to perform in that role on that job, right? You need to have a set of skills, and that's what performance coaching. So performance coaching usually looks at a broader set of skills, whereas skill development is actually very specific to one particular skill, right? Or one particular set of skills, right? So that's how we actually differentiate between performance coaching and skill development coaching. And in a way, you can look at skill development coaching as a subset of all this. Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much for the input. Skills needed for effective coaching, right? So as I mentioned now, coaching is not just one skill itself. It's actually a combination of skills plus the framework, right? So what are skills needed for effective coaching? Active listening, right? I think someone mentioned this now already about willing to invest time, right? To actually listen, right? Patience and empathy, right? You can only have empathy when you actually listen to the other person to seek to understand. So active listening is very important, and it also builds relationships, which I already mentioned as well. Right? So active listening is a very important part of the coaching skill, coaching process. And I just made a note there. What's the difference between hearing and listening? A quick one.
Listening, active listening requires a check-in in terms of understanding.
Check in and understanding. The definition of hearing and listening is
Hearing is more just the ability to hear something. Like I can just listen, I can just hear any random noise, it's still hearing. But listening is actually processing and understanding what is being spoken or being.
okay. Good explanation, right? So hearing is just the physical ability to get the sound, whereas listening is able to understand, like what Lawrence also mentioned, right? To understand. Okay. So active listening is basically listening at a high level, which we'll be talking about. Okay. Open-ended questioning, and the opposite of open-ended questioning would be closed-ended questioning, right? And we're talking about why you want to be using open-ended questioning. Okay. Last but not least, giving constructive feedback is what actually many of you guys mentioned just now. We were talking about giving feedback, right? So giving constructive feedback. So let's review. Active listening. So what do you actually need to be able to conduct good active listening? Right? There are three things here. One is investments, right? And as I showed in short while, it's not talking about money, right? But you need to invest in things. Non-verbal skills as well as verbal skills, right? So let's get straight into it. Investment. The type of investment that you need is actually time, okay? Because active listening requires you to take a longer time than if you are not active listening. Okay? And the other thing that you need to invest is basically practice. Because for most of us, active listening doesn't come naturally. So this is something that you require to have a lot of practice so that you are able to do it well. When I mentioned time just now, I also put that in brackets, no agenda. And the reason why I put this is because sometimes, right, some people may have a tendency to listen to the other person, but may actually have an agenda in mind. Meaning I'm listening to you, but I'm waiting for the right opportunity for me to share something with you or to tell you something, right? That's why I'm listening to you. And when you do that, when you actually have an agenda, you're not really fully focused on what the other person is saying, right? So do not have an agenda, right? Even if you have an agenda, remove the agenda when you actually do it. Okay. So as the saying goes by Theodore Roosevelt, right, the American president, nobody cares how much you know until you know how much you care. And especially in the context of coaching, or in the context of coaching, regardless what type of coaching you're doing, we're talking about coaching for skill development today, but regardless, it could be life coaching or career coaching, the relationship portion is very important. And that's why you need really to do active listening very well, because it actually builds trust and it shows the other person how she actually cares. Now, non-verbal skills. Non-verbal skills include body language, right? What you're doing now, you're listening to me and nodding, right? So that's active listening, right? The other thing is your eye contact, right? Also showing your interest, for example, by leaning in. When you're talking to someone, you lean in, and you're not actually doodling away like drawing Pokemon, or you're actually reading a newspaper while not just reading a newspaper is not common, right? For example, you're on a computer while the other person is talking to you. That is not good body language, right? Expression and emotions. So when the other person is talking, right,
you want to have expressions because, for example, if you show that you are very sleepy or very bored, or you even yawn, right, that shows you're bored and you're not really interested in what the person is saying. So your expressions are very important by showing interest, for example, raising eyebrow and you hear something that's exciting or interesting, right? Smiling, or when there's a humorous point, or giving expressions as the other person is actually sharing with you. Okay. Any questions on this part? Body language and expression emotion.
There's some people who seem fake in it because maybe the analogy of a used car salesperson. And then that's overusing of maybe smile excessively and just trying to maybe overcome their own nervousness and practicing the skill. And in that case, just be your natural self, right?
Thank you very much. So what you're saying is that shouldn't overuse and try to be as natural as possible.
Yes.
Be yourself, essentially. Right? Thanks. So yes. I think that is very true, and I think for us, if we have just started practicing using active listening, I think that's actually a very important point. Right? Don't overdo it, don't overuse it. Right? Just try to be as natural as possible with yourself. But I think it is also common that people, if you've not been doing that and people notice that you've been doing that, they might feel that it's a bit fake or a bit not natural, right? But given time, you'll be able to do it well, you'll be able to do more naturally. Verbal skills, right? So verbal cues, all your yes, those short phrases to show your understanding, right? Those are very important. Verbal cues. Reflective statements. Anybody can tell me what reflective statements are?
Basically showing you understand what the person is saying by paraphrasing what they just told you to help them understand what you're saying.
Would you be able to give an example of a paraphrase?
For example, now I think you're asking me I think it's more of if I were to tell you my it's a story, something that has happened, and then you basically repeat it back to me in your own understanding to basically confirm whether you actually understand what I'm saying.
Okay. So you repeat what the other person has said.
Yeah.
So paraphrasing usually starts with something like, if I understand you correctly, then you reflect back the statement. Right? The caution is over here is that you wouldn't want to repeat exactly what the other person said, because it seems like you're parroting. It can be, to some people, some people may find it very annoying, right? So they try to avoid that, but put in your own words and to your own understanding and reflect back, right? Because when you use, like I said, when you use that one is annoying. Second thing is like when you do it, then they find that you will be like, it's very fake, right? Especially if you overuse it. Yeah. So just be a bit cautious about that. Now, one of the benefits that I really need to highlight, or one of the benefits of Chinese statement, is what you're mentioning just now, right? Really check, you're able to check your understanding of what the person is saying, right? And of course, the other point is also that when you do that, you're also showing that person that you're actually listening intently and attentively as well. Okay. Questions, and in brackets I put there more open-ended, right? So when you are doing active listening, it's very important for you to understand the other person. And when you want to understand the other person, you basically need to use more open-ended questions. You all know the difference between open-ended questions and closed-ended questions? Yes. So examples of open-ended question is you use phrases like how, that starts with how, or starts with what, right? What happened? Right? How did it go? Yeah. So it allows the other person to give you more descriptions or more explanations. Rather than you ask, did it go well? Then the person will just say answer yes or no. Then you won't get anything more from the person. So those are close-ended versus open-ended questions. Okay. And the last two is avoid roadblocks. I'm sharing with you what roadblocks are. So these are things that you need to avoid because roadblocks basically stops the other person from sharing with you. Okay? And avoid hijacking. Does anyone know what hijacking means here? Right? So hijacking is basically you taking over that conversation. So instead of being the active listener, you're now being the active speaker. Right? You're actually taking over conversation. And just give you a simple example of how this happened. Say for example, Lawrence is sharing with me his holiday in Japan. So he's saying, oh yeah, we went here and we did this. And so happened I went to Japan last year as well. I said, hey Lawrence, yeah, I also went to that place and I did this and this, that. I continue on and basically just taking over the whole conversation. So that's basically what is by hijacking. Right? So sometimes that happens when, especially when you're very excited and you want to share something, then you basically hijack the whole conversation. Okay? So avoid doing that. Okay, let's go into understanding, active listening, and watching a video to be able to understand more. Hopefully the speaker is loud enough.
In contrast to the roadblocks, active listening encourages the other person who has the problem to say more.
Sorry. So this talks about the roadblock, but roadblocks will come to the roadblocks later. But this is when the person actually does a good session of active listening. So an example of good active listening in practice.
Active listening is an empathic way of reflecting back both the words and feelings the troubled person has expressed to see if you have understood correctly. Notice the change in Rebecca now that she has learned to active listen.
Hey Matt, what's going on?
Nothing you want to hear about.
I'm having a good day.
No, not exactly. You know that licensing deal that I've been doing with that San Diego company for months now? Well, I thought it was going to be a really good opportunity for us, and they were all going to know, but now I am not so sure.
Oh, well, you know, that's just. Oh, okay, hold on, Rebecca. You can do better than that. Remember what they said about the behavior window? He's the one with the problem right now, so you have really high hopes and now you're having second thoughts, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I've done a lot of these deals, and they'll take a couple weeks, maybe a few months, but this is just getting ridiculous.
Not used to negotiations dragging on like this.
Right. And I thought we were close a couple times, and then they asked for a concession, and I meet them more than halfway. Then I get an email this morning, and they want to postpone signing the contract till the end of the year. I'm so done.
I feel like you've given them all that you can, and now you're just done.
Yes. And I got a friend whose company does business over there, and he said he's surprised it's taking so long. He also said that he thinks there's other companies in San Diego who would be interested in our software.
Oh, so you got another perspective.
Yeah. I think I've just been so focused on this one thing that I just lost sight of the big picture. What I need to do is help someone leads there.
Yeah, sounds like you're feeling ready to move on.
Yeah, I think I am. Hey, thanks.
You're welcome. And keep me posted.
Active listening gives the other person a chance to express their feelings and to move from a superficial problem to the deeper, more basic problem. It keeps responsibility with the other person and allows them to find their own solution.
Okay. So, how do you find this video? Any thoughts on the video? What do you notice the part that
Having a good day?
No, not exactly. You know that licensing deal that I've been doing with that San Diego company for months now? Well, I thought it was going to be a really good opportunity for us. They were all gung-ho, but now I am not so sure.
Oh, well, you know, that's just, okay.
So, what was Rebecca going to do?
Give me the solution.
Exactly. So in this case, Rebecca had received active listening training, right? And now she's realized that she's just about to probably give solution to the other person, right? And realizes it and quickly switch into active listening, right? So likewise, when we practice active listening, we need to always be very conscious about trying to jump in, give solution. Okay? Because that's actually a natural tendency of people. I mean, a lot of people have good intentions. You want to be helpful, right? You want advice, you give solution, but then, as what the video mentioned towards the end, you're not giving an opportunity to the other person, right? To share their feelings and also find a solution themselves, right? So you want to keep the responsibility of ownership of the problem to that person and allow them to find a solution. Okay. So let's go back to slide. Okay. So we'll be talking about roadblocks, but let me just quickly share this with you. Engaging people with problems, right? So how is engaging people with problems different from dealing with people with no problems? In the video that we watched just now, the guy, the male person, the male staff, did he have a problem? He had a problem. He had a problem, right? He was frustrated with the deal, right? That was just dragging on. Okay, so in that situation, that person actually had a problem, right? So what's the difference between someone with a problem and someone without a problem in terms of the way they engage? What usually happens when we are dealing with someone with a problem? What is our natural tendency?
To confirm my understanding in terms of the problem here is a behavioral problem, issue, attitude issue, what does it mean?
Good question. The problem here usually is in the more general, either problem with work. It could be also when you say behavioral problem. Do you mean behavioral problem with another person, or the person having the person who's talking actually having a behavioral problem?
More of the person having behavioral problem.
More the person having a behavioral problem. Even in that context, you may actually still need to use active listening. You will probably actually need to use active listening to understand more of the problem, right? But in the context of, you mentioned an attitude, right? Maybe there's an attitude issue. If the person is willing to talk about it, you will need to also use active listening. However, in the context where the person is not actively sharing, right, then you need to use another skill, which is basically counseling.
Right.
Right? So active listening only works when the person, so the problem can be varied, that's why I said it can be varied, it can be also behavioral problem, it can also be the attitude problem, but only if the person is willing to share. Right? Then you can employ active listening. But if the person stops sharing, then it's difficult, then you have to probe. Right?
So it can also be a work problem.
It can be a work problem, it can be a personal problem, right? It can be any problem actually. So back to my question where, what is the difference between a problem and a person with a problem and a person without problem, the way we engage, is that when we are engaging someone with a problem, our natural tendency is to provide a solution or to help the person solve the problem or to advise the person with the problem. Okay? Because most of us are people with good intentions, we want to help other people, so we tend to do that. So that is the natural tendency, and that is also the challenge with practicing active listening, is that we need to avoid doing that. Right? So that's why we come to roadblocks, because the tendency to use roadblocks is much higher when people share a real problem. Right? Because you just want to fix it by advising or giving a solution. And we'll see actually what are the common roadblocks that are encountered. Okay, so this is the icon for the block, right? Just help you to remember it. And so the common roadblocks are this: advising, moralizing. So it starts with usually like, it is important that you do this. It is good that you do this, or it's only right. Right? Moralizing. It's only right that you do this. Right? Advising, moralizing. Reassuring, praising. Oh, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. You'll be good. Oh, you're so good with giving presentations. You don't have to wait on tomorrow's presentation. You just sail through. Right? So reassuring, praising. Right? Most of us, I think a lot of people feel that that's fine. I mean, what's wrong with that? You are helping the person, right? You are making the person more confident. But what is the actual problem with doing that?
Downplaying the problem.
Sorry?
Downplaying the problem.
Correct. You're downplaying the problem that the person instead of feeling that you're more confident, they feel you're just downplaying my problem. I really have an issue with that. You're just pushing it aside. Right? So, and furthermore, you're stopping the person from continuing on with the problem. Right? So that's actually a roadblock. Even though it has good intentions and it may sound appropriate. Ordering, directing. This is the more aggressive type where when the person shares the problem with you and you order the person, oh, you do this, and you're fine. Just do this. Right, so you're straight away giving a solution. Warning, threatening, this is even on the other spectrum, right? If you don't do this, this will happen. Right? So you're warning, threatening them. And the last one is actually judging, criticizing, or even shaming. Right? So instead of listening and understanding a problem, you're actually criticizing them. You have this problem, always when you encounter this, you're criticizing, shaming the person, right? Or judging, purely judging. Okay? So these are the common roadblocks that you encounter, and we'll watch but before we do that, any questions? We'll watch a short video also on some of the common roadblocks.
When another person is experiencing a problem, most of us have a tendency to jump in and help by giving them advice or asking questions or reassuring to make them feel better. Even though our motivation is to be helpful, these responses do just the opposite and become roadblocks that fail to relieve the other person's upset and often make it worse. Can you think of some recent examples where you used roadblocks when trying to help someone when they own a problem? scrolling images that you want on the homepage. The sizing, the resolution are completely inconsistent.
Wait a minute. You need to make sure that page has exactly what we asked for. Got it?
Yeah, got it.
So what kind of role is that? Not threatening, right? It could be also threatening or warning. Yeah. So, have you encountered situations like this? Yes, I'm quite sure we have actually during our working or even schooling time as well, right? Threaten. So, some people may find this appropriate, but in this case, the guy actually has a problem, right? And before the lady has even turned out or listened to what the guy's problem is, she's really threatening him, really, right? So, yeah. So that's a big major roadblock.
Wait a minute. You need to make sure that page has exactly what we asked for. Yes, sir?
Did you see the newsletter yet? Can you believe they didn't post my article? I worked really hard on that.
Well, it was way too long and kind of hard to understand. And, you know, I just don't think that this kind of writing is your forte anyway. Well, it was way too...
No, you guys stop before the thing wrong. Yeah. But in this case, the roadblock is criticizing. So, does the guy really have a problem? Sorry? Does the guy on the phone have a problem? What would be his problem?
He's unhappy that his effort went to his.
Yeah, he's unhappy. He wasn't recognized for his work, right? And he didn't get published. So in this case, being a, I don't know whether that's the colleague or the supervisor, having to listen out the problem would probably give a better outcome for the guy. Okay, just criticizing.
long and kind of hard to understand. And, you know, I just don't think that this kind of writing is your forte anyway.
Sir? Yes, Steve.
Can I talk to you a minute?
Sure. What's up?
Today's the day I'm supposed to lead the team meeting for the first time, but I'm really nervous about it. I just don't know if I can do it.
Well, did you ask Ray? He's really good at leading meetings.
Well, no, I didn't. And I don't really want to copy his style. I just...
Did you rehearse it? I mean, you prepared your notes, right? Well, did you rehearse it? I mean, you prepared your...
So, we're going to stop again. So it's questioning, right? So in this case, as you can see from the video, right, it basically stops the girl from proceeding further, from sharing her problem. And so by doing the questioning rather than practicing active listening and letting her actually at least share and maybe understand what are real issues. So that's the end of it. So these are examples of common rootblocks. They only show three, but yeah, there are more, but these are the ones that we all encounter at work, at school, even in our daily life. So important to just know that these are things that we do need to avoid in order to be able to really listen intently and understand the other person's problem. So the outcome of a good active listening session, the three outcomes should I demonstrate them more. You are able to truly understand the other party, right? Understand the problem, the issues that we're facing. And it also develops better engagement, right, by active listening. And by doing all the things, the verbal cues, the non-verbal cues, you are better to get better engagement. And last but not least, to build rapport and relationship. And that's really important in the area of coaching, the process of coaching. In the area of coaching for skill development, right, the practice active listening is not as much probably as in, for example, coaching in the context of, for example, life coaching or career coaching. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is because in skill development, often, even though you still need to practice active listening in terms of, for example, the cues, the verbal cues, the non-verbal cues, paraphrasing, all things, but if you reflect back on the way the active listening is done in the first video, right? You may not actually have so much opportunity for a person to actually share the whole problem throughout, right? Because often in that context, they might only share the problem related to the skill. So you might not have so much opportunity, but in the context of, let's say for example, you're talking to someone about a skill, even though you're coaching them on a skill, but they may share with you another problem of their own, say for example, personal problem that is actually affecting a skill. Say for example, if I relate to a salesperson and say, okay, the skill that we are developing is planning the customers that you visit, right? Planning who to see, prioritizing who to see. And the person sharing with you that I'm not able to do a proper plan because my mother is not well. So I have to visit the hospital, etc. So it becomes a personal problem, right? It's affecting the skill. Then you often have that opportunity to go through the whole process of that much of active listening. Otherwise, when it's just related to the skill, you might not actually have so much. So the focus is more on terms of the verbal, non-verbal, and the practice. I just want to highlight that because in the context of skill development coaching, active listening probably plays a slightly less role, right, or lesser amount of time will be spent on listening. Open-ended questioning, right? This is the other skill that is very important. If you remember the framework, the coaching framework, one of the steps of the phase is actually analyzing. Right? When you're analyzing, you're basically asking questions. Right? So often, when I share this with supervisors, or managers, people managers, I'll ask them about their coaching session, and just one question I'll ask them is, who actually talks more during the session? Is it you, or is it your coachee? If the person say, oh, I'm doing most of the talking, then immediately I would know that they're probably not doing coaching properly, or as it should be, right? Because if it's done properly, effectively, the other person should be, the coachee should be the one that's talking more than you are basically asking questions. Right? So, open-ended versus closed-ended, we have talked about that just now already. You'll be using a lot more open-ended, and the reason is because, why are we using more open-ended?
When the coaches speak more, they share more about it.
Right, we want to understand more, so that's why we actually use open-ended. Okay. We all know the 5 W and 1 H. What 5 W's? Who, what, where, when, why. And the H is how, right? Okay, so I'll tell you all familiar with this. But in open-ended questioning, you typically do not use all 5 W's. Right? Can you guess which are the W that you use more in open-ended questioning?
What and why?
What and why? Okay. Interesting that you brought up why. Okay. we'll talk a bit more about that. And the of the H is how, right? You using typically what, how, and interestingly you brought out why. Yes. Yes, why actually does invite more explanation, more description, but there's a catch to it. What is the catch? Can you think of a catch to it? I mean, the catch being a downside to using why.
It's a leading motivation.
It's a leading. It's deals with the motivation. Okay. It's correct. It's leading. In a way, it's leading because it's leading into understanding why the person is doing that. The motivation behind it. That's what I mentioned. But it also deals in other motivation as well. Did you want to share something? I thought you were going into.
Maybe that can be like criticisms or inclusive when you ask them questions. It's always like, why, like competent,
It's
why.
like blaming.
Correct. So there's I think Ethan has already pointed out. It motivation more on the other side of motivation, you may be actually causing demotivation if you ask why too frequently. Occasionally, if you use it, it's okay, but you may, like what Ethan mentioned, is that you may imply that you are questioning the motive or the intention behind it. Right? Because there are other ways to find out by using how and what rather than why. So why even though it is actually a way of doing open-ended questioning, but it's less preferred because of the reason I shared. Right? So don't use why too often, but rather than that, use how and what more often. Okay? Okay, before we end the open-ended questioning, I just want to quickly get you all to think of, and maybe just write down your notes, right? Some of, let's say, come up with like 5 ways of doing open-ended questions with what and how. That means, just the start of it, right? The first few words of asking, just 5, and just quickly share it with each other. See what comes up. Maybe I can the last one, then we'll share with the group. No worry about it. This is just a quick practice session. Are you okay?
No.
Alright. Okay. So, did you find that easy or difficult?
A little tough for me,
A bit tough for you?
because I don't need context.
Yeah.
Okay.
So lacking the context makes it more difficult. Okay. But the variation of questions, were you able to come up with different variations of questions? Yes. Yes. Let's quickly share at least a few of what you did. Lawrence, you want to start?
First one is, what do you think can be the outcome of that action?
Okay.
Second one is, how is the method different from the standard approach?
Great. Another one?
Another one maybe, what else is necessary to move this forward?
Good. Exploring trying to get the other person to think of more options. Did you share? I need to talk more.
I think the way that I was thinking about it is more towards understanding motivation behind certain actions.
Okay.
So, one of it is how do you come up with X, Y, Z, and one other one is a bit. I think it's a bit more criticizing. It's like more of like what do you think can be done better, like best thing, like after the shared solution.
I feel that is not really criticizing. It can be put in a very nice, constructive way. I think it also depends in terms of your tone as well. Yeah. because that's actually a question that is used a lot in, for example, selling skills, what do you call that, coaching. The question again, how you phrase it?
What do you think can be done there?
You can use a slightly different word. One change in the word could actually make it slightly different. What can be done differently instead of what can be done better? Because when you use the word better, it seems like what you're doing is not as good. It's not. So you ask what can be done differently, then that's a question that doesn't judge what you've done, whether it's good or not. Ethan, is there any question you want to share about what you do?
What can I do as a partner? What are your intentions? What you do in this situation? How does this make you feel? How would you approach the situation?
Wow, excellent questions. A lot of that is actually employed a lot of different skills coaching. Very good. Irene, anything else that's interesting to share?
Similar to maybe application of things, but or ask something maybe specific like how does a good brief look like for you? What else would you like to do in the next 6 months?
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe other leading things like how much time for that next event? Or how to describe the innovation process for your customer?
So combinations of eliciting ideas and also getting them to clarify and clarify the process, right? Yeah. Very good. Yeah. So open-ended questions are really important, and as you notice just now, by just using a different word can actually make that question sound very different. Right? How can it be done? Say for example, I use how can it be done better versus how can it be done differently. Right? So a lot of these questions are really important in terms of being able to elicit ideas, explore options, getting them to analyze what happened. A very simple question: how did it go? How did that presentation go? Right? You get the person to analyze the whole solution, or you can be more specific in terms of, for example, how did the customer react when you shared that piece of information? Right? So you can get the coachee to be able to analyze either on broad term or in very specific, just by using what and how. Right? So these two are the most useful questions. And like I said just now, why you can use why, but instead of using why, you can actually ask, what was, how did, for example, how did you want it to, to turn out when you ask that person? What were you expecting for the customer to react when you actually ask the person? Right? Instead of asking why sometimes the supervisors see the salesperson did something wrong. They say, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Even the tone itself can signify that it's like you are really blaming the person. They're doing something wrong. Why did you do that? Right. So rather than say, what were you expecting? What sort of reaction were you expecting the customer to have if you have that when you actually did that? Right? You're actually trying to understand the solution. So open-ended questions are really, really very important, and it's actually the main crux of coaching and skill development. Yeah. And if you remember the coaching framework, which I'll share a bit more, is basically the analysis part where you use this the most, but you can also use it in the other portions of it as well. For example, in planning, where you explore options, right? You can also use open-ended questions as well. Or even at the very start, you actually set the developer objective. Right? Explore what sort of goals you want to agree on in terms of what to develop, what skill, what area of skill to develop. So last but not least is actually giving constructive feedback. Giving constructive feedback is, if you remember now when we were talking about different approaches, right? Feedback was one of the approaches that we discussed about. And in this context, feedback is also important in the process coaching. Right? It's also used. And like when Lauren shared with me, like, oh, you give feedback after you observe performance. Later on just now you mentioned that. This is exactly what sometimes the coaching will entail as well. Right? You observe the performance, and sometimes you may actually provide feedback, but this is not something that is, what you call that, should be done too often. Now, let me share with you an example, because I want to give context to why are we actually using feedback in the coaching process. Where just now I just mentioned that, in the coaching process there's a lot of analysis, right? You analyze a lot, you use open questions, you ask. But sometimes you can actually also put in some feedback. And the reason is because in the coaching process, there are two factors to consider. One is time. Right? When you're short of time, right? Remember, coaching process takes a lot of time. Right? You need to do active listening, which itself takes a lot of time. Right? Then you need to ask questions, and then you need to get the person to analyze. So when you're actually short of time, you actually may want to give feedback. Okay? But giving feedback is only after, so I noticed that I say give feedback and not give instructions. So after you observe the performance and you want to give a quick feedback. Right? Let me just share with you in my own experience the context of sales. Say for example you are doing a joint visit to a customer, right, with a salesperson, and you're actually going through the coaching process, right? Coming out from the visit, you'll be rushing off to another visit. But you want to give some timely feedback, and you want the moment to get lost, right? So you actually give a feedback to that person without going through the whole analyzing process. So there are times when giving feedback is actually appropriate. Yeah? Or you may start off with a very quick, specific kind of analysis, like what I mentioned just now, right? Very specifically, remember when you actually spoke to talk about this, what happened after that when you share? So you direct the person to a particular situation, and then you ask that for a quick analysis, and after the analysis, after what the person has shared, then you actually give your feedback. Right? Again, notice the word constructive. It should be done in a very positive, constructive manner. So, the guide to being able to do good constructive feedback. Timely, you should always be timely. You shouldn't be giving feedback to something that happened a long time ago. Right, where the person themselves cannot actually remember clearly what happened, or vaguely remember what happened. Conducive environment. Conducive environment is basically doing it in, for example, a place that is not noisy, right, so that you can listen carefully, and more importantly, a private space. Because whenever you're giving feedback, you want it to be it's a private situation, right? So you wouldn't be giving feedback to, let's say, for example, a salesperson in front of the rest of the team. Right? Preferably done in a private manner. Okay? Specific, you want to be very clear and precise in terms of what you're giving feedback to, right? Not a general feedback. Oh, I think you done well. What did I do? Was well, right? So specific has to be also be based on observable behavior, right? Specific has to be based on observable behavior. And going back to your question just now, where you asked whether should third party's feedback be used, I actually do not really condone it because it's not something that you personally observe, so there are a lot of issues behind that. So you should, when you're giving coaching, you should always use the one observable behavior not your behavior, but the other person's behavior, observed by yourself. Right? So what you can hear, what you can see, right? That those are observable behavior. Sandwich method, right? If you look up the internet or you look at other resources, sometimes say giving good feedback is you need to give it using the sandwich method. Are you all familiar with sandwich method? Peter, yes? I think yes, Peter is familiar with the same method.
This is a bit over.
A bit over meaning?
People no longer use Spanish.
People no longer use it. Okay, I did not know the current trend. Okay, so for those who do not know what sandwich method is, it is basically how a sandwich looks like. You have the bread, you got the nice ham or cheese or whatever in between, and then you have the bread. Right? So giving feedback in the sandwich method means you start out with a positive, so you say something positive about what the person did first, and then you come in with the feedback regarding the area of improvement, for example, and then you end with a positive thing again. Okay, that's sandwich method. Now put a question mark to it. I didn't know it was not trending anymore, so not viral anymore. But why I put a question mark to it is because here's why. After understanding the sandwich method.
Sandwich lost.
Huh?
The meat is lost.
The meat is lost. Yes. And what do you mean by the meat is lost?
The person only sees the positive.
Percentages?
Only remembers the positive.
Exactly. Yeah. So you give the person the sandwich, but then you actually the cheese or the ham drop, and then let you the bread. I need to remember the positives. Because the other person mentioned twice now, in the beginning and then. So sometimes it lost the feedback on the area of improvement. Lost. So just afraid that too much trouble. Is that why it's not trending? That's why. Second thing?
I think it's also whether giving feedback needs to be very concise, right? If you kind of sugarcoat it too much, then again the message lost, right?
Yeah, true. Okay. Another thing, another possible challenge when you use sandwich, too much uncertainty.
Like you said, with the clinic, when you're active listening, when you are reassuring someone, you are possibly downplaying the issues, so maybe you are diluting the problem you're trying to convey.
That's true, right? So sometimes when you are trying to put the feedback in that manner, right, you may actually, because you have to find the positive thing, right, to say that you may be actually downplaying the whole issue, right? So that happens in active listening as well in the coaching process as well. Okay? And sometimes also another one is it may also seem quite fake when you're doing too often. Just too much of it feels fake in this time. And you constantly have to find positive things to say. And it's a very time consuming thing, but you have to remember the time consuming to sandwich it and give the bread and then give another bread at the bottom. Right? So yeah, in a situation where you need to give quick feedback, sandwich method will not be appropriate. So I think up to you, you want to use it, but the advice is do not use it too frequently. You use it occasionally, but not too frequently.
One of the book that I read, one of the method used is, I remember what's the name of the coach that coached some Olympic gymnasts that give very specific feedback, what went really well, for the gymnast, like, okay, that toe pointing, you did it exactly well, and then, so call out more of the positive thing that needs to be done, and then maybe give very specific, yes, you know, you do maybe more of that, and then actually that was a lot more useful and impactful in terms of the feedback, because it's so specific, it's positive, but at the same time the correction also came in, and that actually helped the gymnast to, the coach was very, very successful in career and creating a lot of Olympic gold medalists.
Very sure. Did you get that? I think the idea that Irene shared with what she read is that you are actually reinforcing good behavior, right? And you want more of that. Because sometimes I think during the coaching process, I think we just too engrossed thinking that coaching process is basically to highlight areas for improvement. But what we also want is actually we want the coachee to do more of what is done well, right? To do more of what is done well, rather than just always just focusing on the area for improvement. So by doing what Irene mentioned just now, right, you are basically reinforcing. At the same time, you are also providing motivation by saying, hey, you've done well in that, do more of that, and also bring in the feedback in terms of what could be done better as well at the same time. Okay. So I think that later on I'll be sharing a bit of the real life coaching the application, and we'll talk more about that as well. Any questions on this? So timely, conducive environment. Be very specific, like what Irene mentions now, you have to be very specific. You just cannot just say, oh, you've done well, be told. What did I do? What exactly did I do that was good, right? So you're very specific about it. Because basically that's what you want them to continue doing and do more of it, right? But if you're not specific about it, you'll be left wondering, and they may be thinking, oh, you want me to do more of this or something else, and you got it wrong. Right? So be very specific of what you want to feedback on. Based on observed behavior. So when you are able to say that, it means you have observed it yourself, right? Very likely you have observed it yourself, because again, it becomes a challenge when it's something that you did not observe it, and you cannot be very specific about it. And last but not least, establish method. You can use it, but do not use too much. Okay, we're going to the coaching framework again, but now, so now basically we know what the skills needed, right? And then we come back into the coaching framework. So just a quick reflection, what are the skills needed? Active listening, open-ended questioning, and last, constructive feedback. Yeah. So these are the skills that are required, and these are required throughout, except for observed performance. If you observe performance, you don't do anything, except you just observe, right? So in the rest of it, you can actually utilize all three of those: active listening, open-ended questioning, and giving feedback. Okay. Shall we take a short break?
Some quick coaching best practices, right? Again, the emphasis is on based on behaviors, seen or heard, not opinions, not judgment, not assumptions, not hearsay, not speculations or reports. Okay? Always based on behaviors that are seen or heard.
To add on some more to this, right? There's a leading practice in this area. So instead of focusing on what was not being done, we need to focus on what was done. Right? So instead, we need to be positive rather
positive, coming back to the positive reinforcement again, yeah, exactly. So that's what Irene mentioned just now as well. What has been done and done correctly, because you want more of that, right? What has been done. I mean, it could be done not correctly, but then we focus on the positive side, what has been done correctly, and you want more of that to happen. So, very true. That's what we do. So, timely also, based on recent events, with best same day, with best fresh out from the call, from the visit. Let's say you're doing a joint visit with the customer, you want to do it straight away happen, right? Or if you are sitting down together with your colleague to solve a problem, kind of thing, you want to do it straight away as the event happens, as the things happen. Right? And last but not least, conducted in a conducive environment. Right? I mean, sometimes people don't think a lot about this, but it's very important because it can affect how the whole coaching process takes place. Right? So even if you do everything well, but you're sitting in a noisy cafe, can't hear you, can't hear me, kind of thing, and a lot of distractions, then the whole coaching process is
give them a safe space.
correct. Also give them a safe space. That's why not recommended to do it in front of other colleagues. Because the whole process is basically supposed to be a positive experience for them. Right? So you want to respect them, and you want to do it in a very positive way. Okay. Okay, before we end the session, I just want to quickly touch on the real world example. Okay, before we do the whole recap. So let me just quickly share this with you. Okay. In terms of how this actually practice. So I'll share with you something that, of course, is close to me and my experience. I'll talk about the coaching process, very similar to what I've shared with you for a sales supervisor, for the sales representative, salesman or saleswoman. Now, so everything else, the whole process is very similar. But what I just want to share with you is basically the kind of form that they use for this particular process, right? So a form is a document that you can keep track of. In the pharmaceutical industry, the coaching process, a lot of companies practice tracking the number of coaching days that the supervisor does, right? They actually track. So, for example, each form represents 1 day of coaching. Right? But of course, you can do, apart from that, you also can do in-office coaching or whatever. But because most of the salespeople work is outside on the field with the customers, that's why they emphasize a lot of joint field work or joint visits with their salespeople. Because you can also observe firsthand what they actually do with the customers in terms of the selling skills, etc. Right? So that's why coaching sessions are done that way. And so you actually have a form to document it, right? And you look at the coaching framework, right? You have the plan and track, right? So it makes it a lot easier when you have the plan and track. Right? So if I mention again, you have the standards, very important the standards. So once you have the standards ready, you can describe the behaviors. And once you have the behaviors ready, you can actually come up with a form to plan and to track it. So typically, what you have in the form, right? You will have all the behaviors. You have all the behaviors set up here. So you have all the behaviors. And this will be the skill. So say the number is 1 to 5, 1 to 3 skill. So before this, right? So you use the form this way. Before this, you have your developmental checking. So this is the very first thing that you do, as part of the process, right? So in the morning, say for example, you are having a joint visit with sales representative to the field. You pull them in to a meeting room, a private space, and you talk about so the first step, set the developmental objective. You talk to them about that. You agree on actually what behavior you want to focus on. Say two, right? This one and this one. So that will be the development for the day. And then you go out and you observe the behaviors, right? Sometimes the pharmaceutical companies like to also make them note down which are the customers they visited. In a way, it's a good practice because, say, for example, I'm visiting 6 customers, right? Customer A, B, C, D, E, F. So you actually note down your space out here also. Your 6 customers that you actually visited, right? Then, of course, in the process, you can do either short analysis sessions, right? You come off from a visit, you do extra analysis sessions, and then you ask them, oh, so how did the call go just now? Very general, and then you can ask very specific questions. What happened when you actually did this? Usually related to the developmental objective, you ask question. Then they give their evaluation, right? Then you either agree or you modify it, right? And you also maybe you can give your feedback as well, right? Or in a situation where the time between visits are very short, we just give feedback, right? So without the proper analysis process. Then at the end of the day, right? You get the sales rep into a private space, and you do the closing summary for the day, right? So you will have already, by the end of the day, you will have already filled up. This one will be 3, this one will be 2.
Can you give some example of the type of behaviors that will be typically seen in the pharmaceutical industry?
So a lot of this because it's working with the reps on the field, right? So often this one is actually selling skills. The other one is territory planning, territory management.
So behaviors like what? Being enthusiastic, well prepared, behaviors.
Exact behaviors, like for example, in selling skills, for example, right? Usually, a lot of companies in the pharmaceutical industry they have very specific selling behavior, selling steps or selling model, I call it, right? So some of it will be 6 selling steps. First, do the opening. When you go in there, you need to do opening. Then you need to bridge it into the topic that you want to talk that day, right? Then you give the messaging. Then you check for understanding. Then you handle objections. Then you close.
Selling process,
selling process. Then you do the closing, right? So they call it selling skills model, or selling process. That's it. The definition is a bit different. The selling process can be a whole lot more than that, right? But selling skills is there, right? So say for example, I'm the supervisor. I want to focus on your bridging, because you often in the past you have not bridged well to the topic, right? So you go straight into it, you know. The other one is
closing,
or checking for understanding or handling objections, right? So then you rate. Some companies they go very specific. They have one form each for this one. So every doctor you rate, every customer you rate. But generally, the more typical one is they get a summary. So on average, from your 6 visits, averagely you are there. Okay? So how the closing summary works is that you share with them this, but there's this one, they call it the best call of the day. So what does this remind you of? Best call of the day. So basically what the coach does is, the coach will describe the best call of the day with using positive reinforcement, right? So in a way it's like the bread at the top of the sandwich.
Of the day or the week or the month, whichever the time frame is.
Because you are doing that coaching that day, right? You refer to that day, like the recent event, right? So you say best part of the day. So with customer C, you manage to, again, it has to be very specific, like what you mentioned. It's not very specific to what you've done well during the call. Right? So best part of the day is positive. But some supervisors, what if there isn't any best call then? Right? I say it's highly unlikely if you have observed well. Right? They must have done something positive in one of the calls. Right? If you have been observing well, they must have done something. Right? It's impossible that they have not done something. Right? So if you don't have, right, you can just say maybe, oh, they have done well in this, maybe in another area. But typically, right, you would keep this related to the behavior, to the other objective. But you really cannot find anything, right? You can relate it to another objective and another behavior. But that's usually not advisable. So I would tell them, you would just relate it. If you observe well, you should be able to get this. Right? So best part of the day. And then the next one is the area of improvement, or some people they like to phrase it differently, right? Developmental thing, objective, or whatever. So what do you need to do? What do you need to work on? So this is like where Irene mentioned what have been done well, what I'd like to see you do more kind of thing. And then this is the area that we should improve on. And then next would be the plan and track log. So the plan in terms of what are the follow-up actions, and then by when we need to build a very specific plan, SMART plan, SMART. Yeah. Then this goes into the system. Oh yeah, sorry. Last one would be coaches feedback. So sometimes they allow not sometimes, I mean most of them they allow the coaches to feedback as well. But most of the time coaches don't feedback, based on my experience. And then this goes to the system, and then basically this will be available for the coach to refer back anytime. Especially during when they are planning for the next coaching session, and they should actually refer back to all this. So there's a progression, you can see the progression in terms of what I worked on, what are the areas that we've done well, what are the areas that we are continuing to work on, right? We have planned, follow actions, everything is well documented.
So this impact the performance evaluation of the employee at the end of the day?
Performance evaluation will always be, I mean based on experience, right? It will always be based on the performance itself, but not on this.
So it's used independently.
Yeah, it's used independently. So when you talk about performance evaluation, you always talk about the performance, but you don't talk about what are being done for your developer actions, for your skill development. Okay. Unless it has to do with attitude. Like you say that it's not very attitude, right? Some people, even though you go through this with them, right, follow action not done.
So this can be used as part of the PIP program.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, I mean naturally it is.
So this is in a well-developed company, then this is in the system and accessible by both the coach and coach, right?
Correct.
So if only the coach keep it, then it's not.
No useful. I mean less useful, I would say it's not useful, it's less useful. So both parties should have so last time, before the event of computer, what is usually carbon copy, the 2 copies, and 1 copy is kept by the coach, and 1 copy is kept by the coach.
Are there companies like having a central database in HR and all these things?
Usually HR is not involved in this process. But depending on how the structure, whether training is part of HR or training is part of the sales function or the sales marketing function. Yeah. because this will often also be shared with the training department as well. So the well-developed CRM system, right, like for the Salesforce, and they usually have a coaching module as well. They have a coaching module. So I'm just sharing with you because I want to, in the next 15 minutes, we'll do a wrap up, right? We're running behind time, but I want to share with you because all this framing, all this coaching framework goes into practice in this. I want to share with you how it is applied in the real world situation. Okay, any questions on this? The real world application? No? Okay. We'll now do a wrap up in terms of the time. So I just want to quickly just refer back to the topics. Sorry? So, definition. So can you remember what's the definition of, without looking at the verse, of definition of coaching? Again? I mean, in your own words, like, go verbatim to it. Okay, you like try? Your mouth is very open.
To best support and draw coach's potential and
How do you do that?
practice listening and providing advice and feedback.
Okay, something about that, right? But basically, you're guiding the coachee towards the learning process, right? Rather than teaching them, right? You're guiding them along. That's why you're using questioning, open-ended questions, right? You're active listening to understand them. So you're guiding them along. So you actually realize that they can actually do it. They have the knowledge. You can actually do it, but you just need to guide them along to help them maximize their potential, right? Types of coaching. We have I mentioned the four types, right? And they are career coaching, life coaching, performance coaching, and lastly, skill development coaching, right? So performance coaching is usually more a set of skills, because you need a set of skills to be able to perform to your role, to your expectations, the expectations of the role. And then skill is more very focused on one particular set of skills. Okay. Challenges in skill development. What are the challenges in skill development? Yes, exactly. Receptiveness of the coachee, right? What else? What the other two challenges? One relates to the word standard. Right? If you do not have a standard, then anything goes, right? And then the last one is regard to the skill perception of the coachee, right? Whether they perceive themselves to be, really good, like what Lauren shared just now. 20 years really in the company, my outcomes are, my sales are always been good, or my performance has been good. So why do I need to do skill development? Okay. When to apply coaching in skill development? Remember the conscious and conscious, commitments. So the part that we don't apply coaching is there's only one, which is the unconscious incompetence, right? Grow model, what does grow stands for? Grow. R is the reality, where they are currently, right? O is options. Yeah, good try. Options. And last one is W. The way forward. The wheel of the thing. Coaching framework. Okay, coaching framework is a bit longer. So I'll just share with you. Yeah. So coaching framework, you set the development objective, you check the standards, observe performance, analyze, plan, and track. Okay. What does this represent? I mean, you use this in analysis, so what do you do with it, basically?
Establish the standards, observe the behavior, and then give the feedback based on performances and the consequences of the behavior and non-behavior.
Okay. So you establish the standards over here first. Right? You've already done that.
Then compare.
Yeah. So remember that the preceding step was observe the performance, right? You actually observe the performance. But when you observe the performance, you're also observing the consequence. So you actually use it in the analyzing phase or the analyzing step, because when you're asking the coachee to evaluate the behavior, you're also trying to get them to also understand the consequence of their behavior as well. Right? And the behavior, you need to check, they need to check whether does it meet the expectations of the standards, right? If not, then what is actually the gap between the standards and the actual consequence, right? And you have to check the behavior, whether the behavior that they exhibited during the observation, whether is it meeting the standards or not. Right? So it's always this comparison of these three things. Okay? Then you plan and you track. Okay? Last one. Last two. Skills needed for effective coaching. There are 3 skills that you need, are very essential for effective coaching, which are active listening, open-ended questioning, giving constructive feedback. Okay? And last but not least, we learn about applying the coaching framework in a real world situation. Okay? Any questions, any input, any feedback?
Even though I've been doing a lot of coaching in my entire career, I still find it very difficult, and especially when I don't do, let's say, joint calls with the sales team. And so sometimes it could be through observation of, let's say, summary reports, or people who are actually in that meeting. Then I have to rely on those resources. It may not be perfect, but then otherwise then I will not be able to coach the team at all. So in that case, what would you advise?
My typical advice is always to do joint business, if possible. Right? Doesn't have to be many, but if you can do it. Now, in the absence of actual joint visits, right, you have to fall back a lot more. Of course, you can also get like what you mentioned. You were saying feedback from other people that were
Summary reports.
Summary report by the coachee themselves,
Yes.
right? Summary report by the coachee. And you can also get during the coaching process, a very important thing to fall back on is actually the coach's evaluation, right? So I would say that is the most important of the 3, the coach's own evaluation of what happened. So the challenge to that, it has to be done in a timely manner, meaning if the meeting took place yesterday, it should have been done yesterday or today. As fresh as possible, basically, because the evaluation of the coachee would the quality of it would fade over time. Yeah. So their self-evaluation would be most meaningful and most impactful on the same day or the next day. Yeah. Whereas the rest will be supplementary. Of course, the summary report will be if they put in enough information there, it will help. Then you can also guide the questions along using that. But yeah. Have you ever thought of any other ways that you can do? Have you thought of any other options that you can use?
In terms of practicality, would be it. I mean, sometimes other things it could happen, like because my coaches may not be in the same country, they are in other countries, so I could actually dial in through a virtual meeting and observe online while they are conducting the face-to-face meetings.
I think that's very good. That's a very good option.
Can we tell you, coach?
Not advisable. Yeah, not advisable to delegate coaching.
Sometimes we only have the span of control, right? So
Now, in some companies, just share this experience and you see whether it works right for you. But in some companies, for example, they have the sales manager as the coach. They also have the marketing folks as the coach as well. So marketing would deal more with, for example, the product knowledge, some part of the selling skills like handling objections and things like that. So the marketing has more so-called because a lot of the product information, the handling objections, guidance and things like that are developed by marketing themselves. So you can call them they are the subject matter expert right? Whereas the coach is not a subject matter expert, but that is not, again, that doesn't make them a lesser coach, right? But in most situations, usually more than one coach is actually not advisable because you may be conflicting. Right? You may be conflicting, or that person may be confused by who am I to follow, kind of thing, right?
That's exactly the point. Sometimes the marketing are there, present in the meeting, and they give the feedback to the manager and say this could have happened, but it didn't happen, and so that becomes the third party input for coaching, which may or may not be welcome sometimes by the coaching.
I'm sure. Right. But again, it's how you use the information. Yeah. By not making that a primary source, then that would be best. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions that you have? If not, then thank you so much for your participation today, very active participation, and making time for this short 4 hour course. Actually, a lot of things to cram into 4 hours. So I apologize if there isn't enough time for practice, but I hope at least you understand the concepts and theories behind it. Thank you very much.